Hello. This is a series for the game Eve Online. My name is Amoni Panala, but you might know me as Zipporah Panala or Camille Panala. I have been in Eve University as an FC and a teacher, and most recently, a mentor. Um, I get a lot of requests for video recordings of classes that I teach. People are always asking, will this be recorded? And the answer is no. I don't record my classes. But then I thought, you know what? I should record my classes. And I don't want to record them while I am teaching because I don't want to uh, I don't want to record people talking. I don't want to record people's names, privacy and all that. So I thought I would record these separate from the actual classes I'm teaching and just sort of give the class as I would if it was being taught in Eve University. But this is just recording, there's no class attending. So now that we've gotten all that introductory stuff out of the way, I would like to get started. So. So, introduction to bookmarks. In this class, we're going to talk about what bookmarks are, how you make them, the types of bookmarks that there are, how to manage your ever-expanding collection of bookmarks, and since there are no questions in a recorded class, with no class attending, I will take questions in the comments and try to answer as many of them as I can when I have time. I can't promise to get to all of them, but I will do as many as I can. So if you have questions after watching this video, please leave them as a comment on the video and I will try to get to your questions as soon as I can. So, what are bookmarks? Bookmarks are locations that are saved in space. So they could be random locations. They could be they could be specific spots in space, but they are locations in space that have been marked and saved in a folder in game. Now, you can bookmark objects such as cans, you can book structures, you can book wrecks, rocks, wormholes, so on and so forth. You can also bookmark random places. So a point in space that you're flying through, you could bookmark a place that you land in space. You could bookmark. You could burn off of a structure or a Stargate and bookmark this space once you reach a certain distance. Um, so there's lots of potential for where you can place bookmarks. Um, and we'll talk about why you would want to bookmark these different things in a moment here. In order to create a bookmark, it's relatively simple. You can hit Control B by default. If you are the kind of person who has to personalize all your settings, I'm not going to be able to help you there. But you can hit Control B, and there are other ways, right? You can go into your Neocom and fiddle around with that, but honestly, just use Control B. Um, it's going to bring up a pop-up window that looks like the one that you see on the slide there. It'll say new location. It'll have label, notes, folder, and expire. Now, in the label, you want to give your bookmark a name, right? And ideally, this should be something that's specific enough that you know what it is, right? It should be very easy to tell what it is. And in the notes section, you can create notes about it, but honestly, I've never seen anybody use the notes section. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use the notes section. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, right? If you're doing a lot of solo stuff, you might want to leave notes for yourself about the bookmarks you're making, especially for like solo exploration. You might want to leave notes for yourself, especially like if you're wormhole diving, right? And you found a wormhole with a bunch of gas sites. You might want to put in the notes like this wormhole system has uh, a crap ton of gas sites. Awesome. In the folder, you have a drop-down menu that will give you options as to where you want to save it. Now, if you are not in a corporation and you're just doing your own thing, you will by default have only one folder. And we can talk about, organizing in a little bit here, but essentially that is the beginning of where you start organizing your bookmarks. Um, and it is important to pay attention to. It can be very easy to bookmark into the wrong folder if you have a bunch of them. This is particularly because when you hit Control B, the folder that is going to come up when you go to save a bookmark is going to be the last bookmark you saved, or the last folder that you saved a bookmark in. So be mindful of that. The last thing before you hit submit or cancel is going to be expire. If you select never, that means it stays in your bookmarks folder until you delete it. If you select 2 days, it automatically deletes itself after 48 hours. Yes, 48 hours. If you select in 3 hours, it's going to delete itself automatically in 3 hours, right? Pretty intuitive there. Why would you want to have a bookmark auto-delete? Well, truth be told, if you are the kind of person that uses bookmarks a lot, and I hope that that's going to be most of you because bookmarks are so important for playing this game, especially outside of high sec, especially if you're into PvP or exploration, you're going to end up with a lot of bookmarks. It is a good idea to use the expire feature to help manage how many bookmarks you have. There is a limit. If you are doing stuff on your own, it's not likely that you're going to reach that limit very easily, but it is possible. So it's always a good idea that if you know that you're not going to need a bookmark after a certain amount of time, just set it for 2 days. If you know that you aren't going to be using that bookmark after today, just set it for 3 hours. Let it delete itself. Because the hassle of trying to figure out a crap ton of bookmarks, several days later as you're trying to, clean up your bookmarks is so much worse than if you just set the expiry for 2 days or 3 hours. And you can always go back in and remove that expiry. So I will point out that if you are flying around in space and you're trying to drop a bookmark in a random place in space, it does not save until you hit submit. So if you're trying to make a bookmark real quick as you're warping around in space, you need to hit submit, or as soon as you land and then hit submit, it's going to be where you land. You have to hit submit while you're still flying in space if you want to get it in a random spot. We'll talk about why you would want that in a minute here. Now you can also do this with the radial menu. I really hate the radial menu. Um, it's got a lot of nice features, but I also feel like it pops up when I don't want it to way too often, so I don't use this method. But it is pretty intuitive. You click on where you want to save a bookmark, and when the radial menu pops up, you're going to look for the little push pin icon, and then it'll bring up that same pop-up that we just spent all this time talking about. So, you know, either option is fine. The important thing is that whatever way that you decide you're going to do it, make sure that you can do it quickly, because there will be times when you want to save a bookmark in a hurry and you don't want to be futzing around with the bookmarks because you don't remember which way is the way to do it with the the hotkeys, and which way. Just don't figure it out before you have to do it in an emergency, right? Now you can also save locations just by right-clicking on the object in space and selecting Save Location. Uh, I do a mixture of Control B and right-clicking and selecting Save Location myself. This is because for physical objects, it is generally easier to get the bookmark where I want it by right-clicking and selecting Save Location than it is to uh, try and hit Control B and be in the right spot so that the bookmark ends up in the place I want it. Um, so for precision's sake, for the sake of time, for the sake of my mental well-being, right? I use a combination of both. Whatever way you decide, you will get this pop-up that says new location with the label, the notes, the folder, and the expire options. Then you hit submit. Now your bookmark is there. Woohoo! Congratulations! And this is the method I was talking about that I don't know anyone uses, but if you want to use it, you can. You go into your Neocom, and if you don't know what that is, when you look in game, by default it's going to be on the left-hand side. You're going to click that E. It looks kind of like a hamburger menu, but it's actually an E. You're going to click on that, and it's going to bring a slide over menu. And you're going to go to personal, then you can click on locations. It's going to bring up your locations, and you can input a new location by hitting the add location button. If this all sounds like a lot, that's because it is a lot. Don't do it this way. I don't know why you would, but you know what? Some people do. I'm not here to judge, but it sounds like a lot of work and not worth the effort. Now, there are a bunch of different types of bookmarks. Now, when I talk about types in this case, I'm talking about more so the use cases of bookmarks, right? So we have things like the structure bookmarks, right? Which are, generally speaking, those are going to be your instant docks, right? Those are bookmarks that you warp to, and now you're at 0 on the structure, and you can dock immediately. If you just warp to a structure from your overview, right? You see Jita 44 and you warp to it. Um, what's going to happen is you're going to arrive at the station, and then you're going to slow boat for a few seconds before you actually dock. And Insta-dock is meant to get around that. So ideally what it is it's a bookmark that is at 0, right on top of the structure, and when it is placed correctly, you can warp to that bookmark and instantly dock in that station. As a pro tip, okay, this was not explained to me when took Intro to Bookmarks, but as a pro tip, you can use Insta-docks and autopilot together to instantly dock without having any delays. And the way that works is you warp to your bookmark. Once you begin warp, hit autopilot on the state on your HUD, and then you will automatically dock up. Now this only works if you've set that station or structure as your destination. If you don't have a structure or set as your destination, it's going to warp you to wherever. It might warp you to a system wherever you set or it might just deactivate and then it won't work as soon as you land on the bookmark. So set your destination to the structure or station that you want to go to, that you want to dock up in. Warp to the bookmark. Once you begin warping, once you hear that warp drive active, go ahead and hit the little A for autopilot, and it'll say autopilot activated or something like that. Once it does that, you don't have to do a thing because it's going to warp off. You're going to head to the bookmark. Once you land on the bookmark, if it's a true Insta-dock, you will arrive at the bookmark, and as soon as you exit warp, you will dock. That is an Insta-dock. Undocks are the exact opposite. They are intended to allow you to get out of a station safely. Now, in some stations, this is not going to be an issue, right? Some structures, you can just slow boat your way out of there. You can align with however long it takes you to align to the Stargate that you want to go to or the other structure that you want to go to. But there are times, like in Jita 44, where it is a good idea to have an undock. The further away from the station, the better. The idea is that your undock should be aligned with wherever the station or structure kicks you out of the station. So you hit undock, your ship is automatically slow boating out of there, right? It's got some forward momentum. If an undock is aligned properly, what will happen is you will instantly go to warp to that bookmark. And it'll be, a few hundred, maybe even a few thousand kilometers away from the station or the structure. And now you're in a safe, random spot in space that people can't get to instantly. And now you can adjust your destination. You can align to the next gate that you're warping to. Do all that stuff that you do when you're just leaving a station and need to get going. If you don't have an undock, what will happen is you're slow boating out of there, then you gotta align, and if you're in a place like Jita 44 where there's a bunch of ships on the undock, there's a good chance that you might get bumped. There's a good chance that you might end up stuck because there's all these ships out in space and you're getting bumped around, and now you're just kind of like, it says it's warping, but it keeps going from 30% to 0, then it's loads back to 30 and then it goes back to 0 because you keep getting bumped, and now you're just sort of stuck, and the only thing you can do then is just to dock back up again. If you use an undock, you will avoid all that. This is especially important if you are hauling goods. If you are in a DST or a freighter, it is always a good idea to use an undock. In fact, you really don't want to be undocking from places like Jita or Amar or any other trade hub or busy station or structure. You don't want to be undocking from there without an undock, because the time it takes to align is the time someone has to lock onto your ship, scan it to see if you have anything valuable, and then blow you up. So that is why we use undocks. The other type of bookmark is for objects and anchorables. So you're out doing missions, and let's say you took a lot of damage, but you put out a mobile tractor unit, right? It's pulling in the goodies and the wrecks, and you want those goodies, you want to salvage those wrecks, but you really need to repair a ship because wow, that was a close call. You can bookmark the MTU, right? Right click on it, save location, name it MTU or whatever, and then hit submit, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got your MTU bookmarked. Hooray. You might also want to bookmark specific things like an asteroid. This is especially helpful because once you get into larger mining ships like the mining barges, the exhumers, especially the industrial command ships like the porpoise and the orca, those are really, really slow ships. Even with a micro warp drive on them, they are incredibly slow, and it's so annoying. So it's best if you can bookmark a rock in an asteroid field or in a ore site, whatever the case may be. Bookmark where you want to be while mining, and then warp your orca, warp your porpoise, warp your exhumers, your mining barges, whatever. Warp all that stuff in to the bookmark instead of trying to slow boat around an asteroid field or an ore site to get to your rocks. Um, so those are sort of some of the examples of you know bookmarking objects that are in space. There's a ton of ways that you can use a bookmark, but those are just some examples that come to mind immediately. You can also use bookmarks to bookmark random places in space, and these are called safes. Now, there's a bunch of different kinds of safes. There are mid safes, there's unaligned safes, deep safes, and rolling safes. Uh, Rolling safes, I don't know if you would actually use a bookmark. I suppose you could, but those are the types of safes there are. Um, and these are intended to create a random place in space that you can warp to, just to get out of a situation, whether it's I don't want to be on this Stargate because there's stuff happening on this Stargate. Maybe you're in the middle of a fight and you need someplace safe to warp off to. All kinds of stuff like that. Now there are a few more here. I'm almost done, I promise. Uh, there are tactical bookmarks, which are going to be things like perches. So those are going to be a certain, a few hundred kilometers above like a gate or maybe a wormhole. and those are going to be things where you can get sort of like a vantage point over whatever is happening on a Stargate or a wormhole or even just a battlefield, right? Like it may not be on a Stargate or a wormhole, but there's just a lot of stuff happening in one space, and you want to perch, right? So you burn up 400 kilometers, and then you bookmark that space. You hit Control B, and you name it something like perch 400 km or something like that, and now you've got now you've got your perch conveniently named, and you can hit submit, and there you go. You can see in the example here in the screenshot, there's a bunch of bookmarks in space, all around the gate for 2 feet. Um, these would be gate tacticals, and you can use these to um, get to a gate safely. I will make this note for you because it is a point of confusion for some people. If you are going to make a bookmark off of an object or a structure, it needs to be at least 150 kilometers off, or else you won't be able to warp to the object. So if you make a bookmark 100 kilometers off of a gate, you're not going to be able to warp to the gate. That's not a super helpful bookmark. If you want to be able to warp to a bookmark and then be able to warp to the gate, you need to be able to warp, and you need to have it 150 or more away from the gate. Now, in the presentation, it refers to these as balance points. I prefer referring to them just as tacticals or tactical bookmarks. Some people might call them pings. It all kind of depends on where you're coming from, where you learned your terminology. They all generally mean the same thing. Um, and these are the bookmarks that you make for strategic positioning, right? Especially in like PvP, or in the case of, you live in nullsec and you want to avoid a gate camp or a drag, like drag bubbles and things. And so you warp to a bookmark first, and then you warp to the gate. Um, those are generally the kind of thing that we're talking about here. I gave examples of PVE bookmarks, but generally these are going to be the things that are going to get you to a location that allows you to do your missions, or in the case of like exploration, you might be running data or relic site, and you bookmark the can so that you can warp off and then warp back to the can. That's a safety precaution that you may feel necessary to take. Um, and that would be a good use of bookmarks. You can right click on the can, hit save location. You could put can 1, can 2, can 3, whatever. Can. Um, and of course, you want to bookmark wormholes. If you're going to jump into wormholes, please, 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 please bookmark your entry and your exit, right? So make sure that you're bookmarking the side that says K162, and then you need to bookmark the other side where it should say something like um, it'll say something like U216 or 2446, or something. It'll have a letter and then 3 numbers, right? So you want to make sure that you're bookmarking both sides, because as soon as you warp off, that wormhole isn't going to be on your overview anymore. It's not like a Stargate. So please bookmark your wormholes, or you're going to be lost, and then you'll really be in trouble. You'll have to get Signal Cartel to help you out. So we talked about what instant undocks and instant docks are. Now let's talk about how you make them. Okay? So for the instant undock, you're going to want to be in a ship that can move fast. So this is going to be like a light frigate. You know, get in your Atrons, get in your Merlins, get in your Condors, your um, get in your Punishers or your probes, whatever. But get in something that's fit with a micro warp drive. Then you're going to undock, and as soon as you undock, you're not going to click anywhere in space. You're just going to turn on your micro warp drive. And unless you get bumped as you do this, you are just going to keep going straight in the direction that you undocked. And you're going to go for some distance. The presentation says 200 kilometers, but I would say go for like 500, maybe even 1,000 if you have the patience for it. I have quite a massive instant undock for my hauling characters because I am paranoid and I just have to have that long distance instant undock. And it doesn't matter so much how far away you are in terms of kilometers, because when you jump to warp, that distance is basically nothing. You're going to warp there in a moment. But it does need to be far off, and ideally it's far off enough that people cannot burn to you, right? People should not be able to notice that you warp from the station to your bookmark and, you know, catch up to you. It has to be far enough away that they can't do that. So, you get in your ship, you undock, you turn on your prop mod, you go out 500 kilometers, and once you're out there, you drop a bookmark, right? Control B, name it something like maybe the system, and then undock. So if you're in Jita, name it Jita undock or Jita 44 undock if you have multiple undocks in Jita. And then, you know, you've got your instant undock. Now, I would highly recommend that you test it before you start doing things where you're flying valuable ships and you might lose something. Test it in that same speedy little frigate. Make sure that you, as soon as you undock and select warp to that bookmark, that you just go. There shouldn't be any delay. Now you're basically going to do the inverse for instant dock. Now for this one, you still want a fast ship, but you don't have to go very far because all you want to do is one of two things. The first is you undock and hit control space. By default, control space stops your ship immediately. If you do this, as soon as you undock, you're going to be right on the station. And you can drop a bookmark there. Hit Control B, name it something. You know, we're using Jita 44 as the example here. Name it Jita 44 Instant Dock. Right? Now, one piece of advice that I would say is that for places like Jita 44, use the alternative method, and that's the one I'm about to explain here. So the alternative is, instead of doing that, which is all well and good, but for places that are very, very busy and see a lot of traffic, it is a good idea to manually pilot. So click in space or use um, or use Q, the double Q method with your tactical overlay on. But manually pilot your ship out and behind the station. Now, ideally, you're going to be just above the station and a little bit beyond the station. And then you're going to hit Control B and you're going to save your bookmark, and Bob's your uncle. Once you've got that bookmark, you should be able to warp off instantly after undocking, and then when you dock, you should be able to warp to that bookmark and immediately dock. Test these bookmarks out. Make sure they work. Make sure there's no delays. If there are any delays, you may need to redo the bookmark. It could have been you got bumped while you were making the instant undock, and so now your ship wasn't pointed in the direction that you came out of the dock or out of the station from. In the case of an instant dock, it could be that as you were motoring out and around the station, maybe you went a little too far off and you were no longer at zero on the station. Now, the undock control space bookmark is great for a lot of things when it comes to creating an instant dock. With extremely busy places like Jita or Amar, Dodixie, Heck, Rennes, these places are so busy that you want to make sure that you're warping to a spot that is not within locking range of these trade hub campers. So this is particularly true in Jita. You'll see people on the undock who are in tornadoes, they're in taluses, they're in nagas, they're in thrashers, and they just sit there, they scan your ship, they're looking for valuable stuff, and they're looking to see if they can blow up your ship. Generally, they have sort of a profile of what kind of ship they will blow up based on how much damage they can do, how much tank you need to be able to survive them. So they generally have a good idea of what they can destroy. It is better not to have to mess with any of that, and instead just create that bookmark by manually piloting out a little above and a little behind the station, so that you're out of range of those guns, but you're still at zero on the station. Now, we talked about safes, and there are two that I want to focus on here. These are the aligned and the unaligned. Um, the aligned safe, or the mid spot safe, is going to be a lot easier to make than the unaligned one. But both of them are okay, right? It is worth saying that both of them are not 100% safe. So please don't assume that just because you're at a safe that people can't get to you. Push comes to shove, they will put out combat probes and scan you down. So an aligned safe, or a mid spot safe, is a safe that you make when you warp between two objects in space. Generally, these are going to be stargates, or wormholes, or planets, or a planet and a stargate, a wormhole and the sun, or something like that. I will say, don't use the sun as one of your warp points, but we'll get to that. So you're picking two random objects in space. You're going to warp from one to the other. And as you're in the process of warping, you're going to hit Control B. You're going to name it something like Safe One, or, the cool secret spot. And then you're going to hit Submit. And as soon as you hit Submit, it's going to drop a bookmark in space. And assuming that you are still in warp, that bookmark is going to be at a random spot in space in between these two objects. Now, it is between these two objects, so it's if you line up the object where you came from, the object that you warped to, and the bookmark you just made, they're all going to be in line with each other, right? So that's okay, but it is a lot easier to find. An even safer safe spot is the unaligned safe, which takes a little bit extra effort. You're gonna make a mid safe or an aligned safe, right? An aligned bookmark, warp from one object to another, drop a bookmark somewhere in between. Then you're gonna do that again with two separate objects, right? And you're gonna go back. You're gonna warp back to the first bookmark that you made, and then you're gonna warp to the second bookmark. And as you're in warp, you're going to drop another bookmark in the middle somewhere. And now you have an unaligned safe. The unaligned safe is super useful because you can't necessarily pin it down with DScan as easily. And even if they can sort of narrow down where you are, they can't warp to you to an unaligned safe. It's just not possible. They'll have to bring out combat probes to get you. And hopefully by that point you have come up with an escape plan. Now, another one would be deep safes. These are generally going to be places that are outside of DScan from any object in the solar system. These are going to be spots in space that are not aligned with anything. They are just bookmarks that are way, way out there. And the best method I have heard for making deep safes, I know there's a couple suggestions there, but I'm going to recommend a different one to you, and that is get in a T0 abyssal right before downtime. Clear that first room. Stay in that first room, and as downtime happens, you're going to lock back in after downtime, and then you're going to find yourself outside of the abyssal. You're going to be warping from some random spot way out in space to where you set up that abyssal trace. While you are in warp, drop a bookmark immediately. As soon as you can, drop a bookmark, because that bookmark is going to be way out there. Now you have your deep safe. Okay? That is probably the easiest, most reliable way to create a deep safe. So now that we talked about deep safes, let's talk about rolling safes. Now, the instructions in this presentation are fine, but I'm going to tell you a bit of an easier way to do rolling safes because uh, this is kind of rolling safes with extra steps, and it's really not necessary to do all that. Rolling safes are essentially the fleet is going to warp to either the FC or a scout or a hunter who's off in a safe somewhere. Then you're going to anchor up on the FC and you all are going to burn in a random direction. So generally this is going to be the FC picks a random direction, they start burning, they turn on their prop mod, everybody else turns on their prop mods, they anchor up on the FC, and now you all are moving in a random direction at high speed or relatively high speed, and it is much harder to get a combat scan on a moving target. If you are actively being combat scanned, you're going to want to follow these steps, which is just instead of just burning in a general direction, you're going to want to have that scout, that hunter, or even the FC themselves warp off to another safe or create a new safe, and then the fleet warps to the scout, to the FC, to whoever is finding these safes or making these safes, and continue burning until another safe is made, and you keep doing this until you can get to safety. This is entirely to prevent being caught, right? Especially if you've just done a really sneaky gank in nullsec and you want to get away from danger. A rolling safe is a good way to do that, um, because it means that you are that much harder to combat scan, and hopefully, if you do it right, you can do it long enough to then figure out how you're going to get home. Um, Again, not foolproof, but definitely doable, and a lot safer than just staying in one place where combat scanners can get your location and warp a response fleet on top of you. This is pretty self-explanatory, but there are two kinds of bookmarks. There are corp bookmarks, which are going to have the push pin icon with a little rounded head, and then there's going to be your personal bookmarks, which are going to have a square head. And corp bookmarks can be accessed by everyone who has bookmark access. So generally that's going to be everyone in the corp, plus whoever else is on the bookmark access list. Um, this is going to be, uh, you know, tacticals that the corp makes. So a lot of corps make instant undocks and instant docking bookmarks for the trade hubs. Usually Jita and maybe some of the others like Amar or Dixie, but for sure Jita. A lot of corps do that. Um, and then you have your personal bookmarks. So these are going to be things that are uh, important to you personally, but don't necessarily need to be available to the rest of the corp. Do be careful because it is very easy to accidentally save a bookmark to your personal bookmark folder instead of the corp bookmark folder. And then, your corp mates are going to, get on your case on comms. Why can't I find this bookmark? I can't find it anywhere. And all the whole time you're like, well, I bookmarked it, it's there, I can see it. Well, it's because you made a personal bookmark instead of a corp bookmark. um it's also, you know uh hopefully you can trust your corp mates, but maybe you don't want to share all of your personal bookmarks with your corp, and so be sure that you're not sharing all your safes and all your tacticals, all your pings and perches with the corp. Not only is it for your own safety, but also because the corp does not need all those bookmarks. The corp already accumulates a bunch of bookmarks from, the random activities that your corp does. So don't contribute to that mess. When you are in space, you should be able to see bookmarks. Now, this is going to depend a bit on how you have your overview set up, how you have your brackets set up, but generally speaking, you should see bookmarks in space, and you'll see them uh, essentially regardless of how far away you are from them. Um, you can you can hit Control O to enable the sensor overlay, which is going to make these little brackets light up like Christmas lights, right? Um, but generally speaking, you want to be able to see your bookmarks, even if they're far away, because you may need to warp it to them at a moment's notice. Play around with that on your own time, get a feel for how that works. I recommend that after this class, after you've seen this class, that you experiment with bookmarks, that you get a feel for it. And if you're in a corp that uses bookmarks, that has like a corp bookmark folder, ask about what their bookmarking scheme is, because they may have a specific way of naming bookmarks, and it would be good to learn that bookmarking scheme as you're learning how to bookmark so that you can just kind of get it all in one go, right? Now, let's say that you are in wormhole space. You just dove into a wormhole, you're hoping to get some gas, and you're scanning down stuff and you find a gas site. You are going to have to reship into your venture or your coveter or whatever. But you know that you're going to have to come back, and you want to make sure that you can get to the gas site, um, and you want to make sure that others can get to the gas site too. So you're going to make a corp bookmark. You also don't want to warp to the gas site because you know that rats are going to spawn as soon as somebody warps to that gas site. So you basically want to create a bookmark on the gas site without having to warp to it. The easiest way to do this is to open up your system map, right? You are then going to right click on the gas site and hit save location. It'll bring up that same pop-up location. Once you have your bookmarks, you don't need to have your system map open unless you want it open. But then you can just warp to the bookmark, and now you can get to your gas site and start huffing the gas. Hooray, everybody's happy. This is a good way of bookmarking things that you don't want to warp to. I will give you the warning that you generally don't want to bookmark wormholes this way, because bookmarking from your map is an imprecise way of bookmarking. So the bookmark is going to be within a certain distance of the object itself that you're or the location itself that you're bookmarking. So if you bookmark a wormhole from the system map, what's going to happen is you'll warp to the bookmark, and it could be somewhere between 5 and 15 kilometers off the wormhole, right? That is super not helpful if you need to jump through the wormhole right away. Um, it can cause all kinds of problems. So be aware that you can bookmark from the system map, but there are some things where you absolutely do not want to bookmark from the system map, and one of those is going to be wormholes, right? As you may have picked up from me talking about, where you save your folders, uh, organizing your bookmarks is always a good idea. It will cut down on the number of headaches that you get from having to worry about your bookmarks, and it will also make it easier if you need to go back in and try to find a specific bookmark for future reference. You can also use folders as a way of naming what kind of bookmarks they are. So, for example, you might create a folder in your bookmarks that is just undocks and instant docks, right? Instant undocks and instant docks. And so instead of naming it G244 instant dock and G244 instant undock, you might just label it G244, and you put it in your instant dock folder or your instant dock and instant undock folder, right? And now you have these bookmarks, and they're organized by uh, both what they do and where they are, right? Um, you can create folders within folders. So um, maybe you want bookmarks that are, maybe you have a bookmark folder that is for missions, and then you have a subfolder for MTUs, and you have a subfolder for um, pings, and you have a subfolder for uh, recs, or whatever the case may be. But essentially, you can create a folder, then you can put another folder inside of that and organize it as is important to you. The important thing to be aware of is that you can do this in both your personal and shared locations, but anything that you put in shared folders is going to be accessible by anyone else who has access to it. And that includes corp bookmarks that you have edit rights to. So that means that anyone with view access to that is going to be able to see it. And any folders and bookmarks that you put in those folders is going to be seen by uh, the entire corporation. You will also be able to see when you open up your locations box, and by default you can just hit L. This is going to bring up what you see in the screenshot there, with the locations in embed, personal locations, shared locations, and agent missions. When you bring this up, you will also see under shared locations, you're going to see a number of bookmark folders that have been shared with you over time. So this might be a set of bookmarks that was created for a fleet. This might be um, bookmarks that were created of an asteroid with bookmarks to all the specific rocks that are of a certain size and above. Um, you will be When you are invited to add these bookmarks, you will be given the option to online them or keep them offline. They will show up in this locations, and you can online them by right-clicking on them and select online. You can have a maximum of 3 shared folders worth of bookmarks. If you want to bring up another folder, you'll need to offline one of them. So you'll need to right-click on the one that you want to offline and select offline. You don't want to deactivate that folder. You just want to offline it. Okay? Okay. I will point out that for Eve University, the access to creating folders and creating bookmarks is different between the different stagings. So, for example, WHC, they are very selective about who they allow access to the bookmarks. Um, so most Unistas outside of WHC, the wormhole community, are not going to have access to the wormhole community bookmarks. The nullsec community is going to, they have their bookmark folder available to anyone who wants it, who's in Eve University. Very simple to access. Now this stuff is a bit more, this is a bit more advanced. But if you are creating an access list, and this is for, determining who has access to a shared folder. Is it going to be accessible to your corp? Is it going to be accessible to a group of friends? Is it going to be accessible to the entire alliance, right? Whatever the case may be, you can go into your neocomp, right? The weird looking E at the top. Go to social, then select access list. You're going to create a new access list. Then you can put in whatever name you like. It should be descriptive. And then you can put in a description if you want to. I don't usually see descriptions, so, I think most people don't bother. Generally, the name is enough. Then you're going to hit create. Once you've got that up, you can drag and drop corporations, alliances, individuals into the access list and add people that way. You're also going to have buttons where you can add individuals, corporations, alliances. Just be aware that unless you revoke access, people are going to continue having access to it if you add individuals. If you add a corp, right, people will lose access as soon as they leave the corp. If you add an alliance, all the corps in the alliance will have access. All the people in each of those corps will have access. So think about who is that bookmark for? Who needs access to it, especially if you're creating, sensitive things like gate tacticals, right? Things that you can warp to avoid getting caught in drag bubbles and gate camps. Um, I think that's probably all we need to cover for that. So as I said earlier, there are limits on how many bookmarks you can have. The limit for personal bookmarks is 3,000 bookmarks. You can have up to 5 personal bookmark folders online, right? Remember how we talked about online and offline? You can have 5 online that are personal. You can have a total of 30 folders. When it comes to shared bookmarks get 500 bookmarks. You can have a maximum of 3, right? We talked about this already. 3 shared bookmark folders, excuse me. You can be connected to up to 30. Now that's a combination of online and offline. So if you have 3 online, you can have 27 more that are offline. When you create bookmarks for a shared folder, it takes a moment to spawn. My presentation here says 2 minutes. I don't think it's that long, but it might be. I thought it was quicker than that. I thought it was about a minute. Um, the important thing to keep in mind is that there is a delay. So do not assume that because you created a bookmark that everybody will see it right away. Now, if they have their locations window open, right, it will show all the current locations, and it will show that there was a new bookmark made, but you can't warp to it um, until it's fully propagated to the rest of the rest of the access list. So you might see a new bookmark instantly, but you won't be able to warp to it until it's fully propagated. As I said, you can make your locations window pop out, and there's a little button for that. I will show you here. So if you look at this screenshot here, you have locations in embed as the first folder in your locations window. On the right hand side, there's that little icon with the arrow sticking out in the corner. If you click on that, that's going to bring out your locations window. And that's not all of your locations bookmarks. It is just the ones for the system that you are in. It is super helpful to have that out and accessible, especially if you need to warp off very quickly. Having that out will enable you to be able to access your bookmarks a lot quicker than having to press L or going into your Neocom, social, locations, blah, 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 blah. That's too much. Just do the pop-out window. In a pinch, pressing L and bringing up this big window will work, but really you want to be able to see a list of the bookmarks that are in system with you. As I said earlier, please be mindful of who you are sharing your bookmarks with, especially if they are tacticals, especially if they are safes. All that stuff is should be kept secret. It should be kept safe. Um, these are it may sound paranoid, like, come on, folks, this is just a game. Why does it matter? But think about it this way: if you are in a corp like Eve University, right? You have no idea where people are going to end up. You could end up in Sovnal, and your friend ends up in wormhole space. You might end up fighting each other sometime. If you have shared all your personal bookmarks with a friend, uh, all your safes, all your tacticals, and you haven't bothered to update them, well, now all your safes, all your tacticals are burned, and you're in trouble now. Because now your wormholer friend is going to be able to warp to you wherever you go because they have all of your safes and all of your pings, all of your tacticals, right? So it's not even malicious, right? It's just being smart. Have something for yourself, right? You can share bookmarks by shift dragging. Um, you can share entire folders just by dragging them into a chat window, um, into like an Eve mail, whatever the case may be. And of course, if you want to read more about this, you can check out the Eve University Wiki. We have extensive details about all of this stuff and how it works. You can always refer back to those as a quick reference guide, as well as further instruction, right? And for those of you who are in Eve University and watching this, feel free to send your questions on Discord, drop them in the general chat, drop them in one of the uh, drop me a DM if you want. Uh, I'm happy to I'm happy to try and answer as many questions as I can. I can't promise I'll answer all of them. For the rest of you who are watching this video, thank you for watching. Please do leave your questions as comments, and I will try to answer as many of those as I can. This is hopefully the first in a series of classes that I teach. The idea is to create sort of um, a sort of library of classes that I teach, and that way, even if somebody is not able to attend one of my classes, they can still benefit from my teaching by watching one of these videos. And it also becomes accessible to folks outside of Eve University. So hopefully this was helpful to you, and I'll be on the lookout for your questions. If you have the inclination to do so, I always appreciate a like. And if you want to stay up to date for when the next class comes out, be sure to subscribe, click the bell, do all those social media like things, and until then, I'll see you then. Fly safe, everybody.